Marcus hadn't noticed the tremor in Elena's hand when she handed him coffee that morning. He'd been too busy rehearsing his pitch for the Dubai investors, scrolling through projections she'd helped him refine the night before, while fighting a fever she insisted was just stress. By Christmas Eve, the penthouse felt like a museum. Beautiful. Expensive. Lifeless. Elena sat curled on the Italian leather sofa, her laptop open despite the chills racking her body. She was debugging code for the expansion Marcus would present in Dubai, code that would make them both another fortune, though only his name would appear on the patents. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I think I need to see someone. It's getting worse." He glanced up from his phone, irritation flickering across his face before he smoothed it away. "Honey, we've been over this. You have an appointment with Dr. Morrison next week. Can you just power through tonight? This Dubai thing is. I know how important it is." She always knew. That was the problem. The housekeeper, Maria, appeared in the doorway. She'd been with them for 12 years, long enough to remember when Marcus used to make Elena laugh, when he'd cook her terrible pancakes on Sunday mornings, when he'd looked at her like she hung the moon. "Mr. Reeves," Maria said carefully, "Mrs. Reeves needs a hospital. Her fever is 103. She's been this way for 3 days." Marcus checked his Patek Philippe. The jet was scheduled to leave in 90 minutes. The entire board would be there. The Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund. This was the culmination of 5 years of work that Elena had made possible, though she'd never asked for credit. "She has a doctor's appointment scheduled," he said, already moving toward his study to grab his briefcase. "If it gets worse, call Dr. Morrison. He makes house calls." Elena tried to stand. Her legs buckled. Maria caught her, shooting Marcus a look of pure disgust. "She's collapsing, and you're worried about a watch?" But Marcus was already in the elevator, already compartmentalizing, already convincing himself that Elena would understand. She always understood. On the jet, he ordered champagne to celebrate what hadn't happened yet. He didn't check his phone. He didn't see Maria's increasingly frantic texts. He didn't know that Elena had crawled to the bathroom and couldn't get back out, that Maria had called 911 against his instructions, that his wife was being loaded into an ambulance while he reviewed PowerPoint slides at 40,000 feet. The Dubai deal closed at 2 a.m. local time. Marcus raised his glass, shook hands, felt the rush of victory. Another empire-building triumph. Another deal that would make headlines. His phone buzzed. 37 missed calls. His heart stuttered. The voicemail from Maria was brief, she could have died. "I quit." Elena's message was even shorter, "I'm done." He caught the first flight back, panic clawing at his chest. This wasn't the script. Elena didn't leave. Elena understood the sacrifices. Elena was patient, supportive, brilliant, and patient again when he forgot her birthday, their anniversary, the little moments that apparently added up to everything. The penthouse was exactly as he'd left it. And completely different. Her books were gone. Her ridiculous collection of vintage T10s. The photos of them from before the money, before the pressure, before he'd become someone she had to schedule appointments to see. The note sat on the counter, next to her wedding ring. "Marcus. For 15 years, I built you up. I wrote the code that launched your company. I fixed the algorithm when it failed. I stayed up countless nights solving problems you got credit for, and I never asked for recognition because I believed in you. But you stopped believing in me the moment I became convenient instead of essential. I don't blame you for ambition. I blame you for forgetting that I'm human. That I get sick. That I get tired. That I needed you on Christmas Eve, and you chose a merger over my life. You'll learn soon enough what I'm worth. Not to your company, to myself. Don't call. I won't answer." The news broke 3 days later. Financial analysts had been combing through TechCore's holdings, verifying assets before the Dubai merger could finalize. They found something peculiar, a prenuptial agreement Marcus had signed 18 years ago, when he was a broke grad student and Elena was the teaching assistant who believed in his impossible startup idea. The agreement gave her 40% equity in any company founded within their marriage using jointly developed intellectual property. Marcus had forgotten. Elena hadn't. But the real earthquake came when a tech journalist started asking questions. Who actually wrote TechCore's revolutionary algorithm? Who solved the scaling problem that had stumped the entire industry? Who had her name buried in the original patent filing before Marcus's lawyers quietly refiled without her? Elena's LinkedIn profile, dormant for years, suddenly updated, founder and chief technical architect, TechCore Solutions, 2008 to 2010. Currently on medical leave. The story exploded. Not as a revenge tale, but as investigative journalism. Screenshots of original code with her signature comments. Early emails showing her solutions to problems Marcus had claimed to solve. Testimony from former employees who remembered the quiet woman in the corner office who fixed everything Marcus broke. The Dubai investors pulled out within 48 hours. Not because of the divorce, because Marcus had built his reputation on someone else's genius, and they couldn't trust what else he'd lied about. Board members who'd once competed for his approval turned cold. The stock price tumbled. And Marcus, alone in his penthouse, finally understood what Elena had been trying to tell him for years. He wasn't the hero of this story. He was the obstacle she'd finally removed. New Year's Eve arrived like a punishment. His friends were at parties he hadn't been invited to. His phone sat silent. The penthouse, once a symbol of everything he'd achieved, felt like a mausoleum for a life he'd murdered through 1,000 small acts of neglect. He found her contact information through her sister, who answered with ice in her voice. She almost died, Marcus. Sepsis. Another 6 hours and her voice cracked. You don't get to fix this with flowers and apologies. I know, he said quietly. Can you just tell her I'm sorry? Tell her yourself. When you're someone worth listening to. The line went dead. Therapy felt like having his skin peeled off. Dr. Chen didn't let him hide behind business jargon or rationalizations. You've spent 20 years optimizing your life for profit, she said during their 4th session. What have you optimized for love? Marcus had no answer. He started small. He resigned as CEO, to the board's relief and the media's fascination. He funded a scholarship for women in computer science, anonymously, in Elena's name. He volunteered at the hospital where she'd nearly died, reading to patients in the oncology ward who reminded him how fragile everything actually was. He didn't do it for redemption. Redemption required forgiveness he hadn't earned. He did it because Dr. Chen had asked him who he wanted to be, and for the first time in decades, his answer wasn't successful. 6 months later, Marcus was reading Where the Wild Things Are to a 7-year-old named Samantha when he felt someone watching. Elena stood in the doorway of the pediatric ward, thinner than he remembered, her hair shorter, her eyes cautious but not angry. He fumbled the book, and Samantha giggled. You messed up the voices. Sorry, he said, to both of them. Elena waited until he finished the chapter, until Samantha's mom arrived to take over, until they were alone in the hallway with its antiseptic smell and humming fluorescent lights. Maria told me you've been coming here, Elena said. Every Tuesday and Thursday. For 5 months. It seemed important. He shoved his hands in his pockets, suddenly awkward. How are you feeling? Better. Stronger. She studied him like code that might contain a hidden bug. You look different. I am different. He met her eyes. I know that sounds like a line, but... Marcus. She held up a hand. I didn't come here to reconcile. I came because my niece is a patient here, and I saw your name on the volunteer roster. I needed to know if this was real or if it was another performance. The words stung because they were fair. It's real, he said quietly. But I don't expect you to believe me. I wouldn't believe me either. She nodded slowly, something shifting in her expression. Not forgiveness. Not quite. But maybe the beginning of something more valuable, acknowledgement that people could change, even if change didn't erase the past. There's a coffee shop downstairs, she said finally. Hospital coffee, which means it's terrible. But if you want to talk, just talk, nothing else. I have 30 minutes. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. Not hope, exactly. Hope was too presumptuous. But possibility. I'd like that, he said. They walked to the elevator in silence. As the doors closed, their reflections appeared in the polished steel, two people who'd built an empire together and lost each other in its shadow, now standing in a hospital elevator, drinking terrible coffee, and learning how to be human again. Outside, the city glittered with the promises of a new year. Inside, in the quiet space between what was broken and what might be repaired, Marcus asked Elena about her niece, and she answered. He asked about her health, and she answered honestly. She asked what he'd learned in therapy, and he told her the truth, that he'd spent 20 years winning everything that didn't matter. And now? Elena asked. Marcus looked at her, really looked, the way he hadn't in years. Now I'm trying to understand what does. She didn't smile. But she didn't leave either. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, that felt like enough. If stories like this make you think about what really matters in life, consider subscribing. Not for more drama, but for more truth. Drop a comment sharing what success means to you. Sometimes the algorithm we need to rewrite isn't in our code. It's in our hearts.